Hi everybody. I created a visual this week to represent what I'm doing. I'm doing a needs assessment of the the undergraduate early childhood program here at the university. And what I want to look at is my needs assessment is guided by the questions of what should our early childhood candidates or students know and be able to do in relation to technology integration in the classroom, with a particular focus on math and science technology integration. So I'm focusing on those two curricular areas because the nature of technology integration changes by subject matter. At least that's an argument that is made. And so I'm going to look at those two areas. And so it's a needs assessment, and a needs assessment looks at the difference between what should be, which is what this sort of cluster of stuff over here, even though it's not totally clear with my visual, which is a little bit rough, I admit, this represents the what should be stuff. So how do I figure out what should be? What should these early childhood educators know and be able to do in relation to technology integration in math and science? I'm going to look at, for the should, I'm going to look at the values, goals, statements of various organizations that drive, that decide what candidates, what future teachers should know. And so and I don't have them all listed here because I met with one of the administrators of the program this week, and on my piece of paper I noted some additional places. But I've already started gathering data from multiple of these places. I have not started analyzing it yet, but I've started collecting extracts that have to do with this particular issue, and I have them collected on my wiki. Again, not analyzed yet. I need to get and it's not a super hard kind of analysis. It's like for some of these organizations, like InTask has very little to say about this question, very little that's specific. So I might find one, little phrase of like 8 words that has to do with it, and that might be it. I don't remember, but I know InTask didn't have a whole lot to say. InCate has barely a little bit more than InTask to say specifically on this topic. But I, just out of respect, because it's appropriate to go figure out what all the leaders of an early childhood future teacher have to say on the topic, that's part of my should. I'm also looking at policy documents, things that relate to, the whole push for STEM. So the U.S. Department of Education has a recent publication about it. The U.S. Joint Economic Committee had something that they put out recently. ASTRA, which is a science education organization, has some stuff, and I've just been collecting documents. And then again, this early childhood chair pointed me to this enormous wealth of information about the future science standards that are coming, because in Georgia we don't use the Common Core for science, because I don't even know, there probably isn't a Common Core for science. So what she pointed me to was the science standards that are being developed at a national level that are kind of like the equivalent of the Common Core, and they may be deployed in 2014 or something in Georgia. Maybe, you don't know. But I'm going to look at that because that's the most recent update to standards that we've got, and I think it's going to have something to say about it. I have not collected those data yet. I'm also looking at empirical research, and that's just something I keep doing. I keep collecting data on that. I've already got some articles collected, some opinions, some research-based, findings and shoulds coming out of that. I need to look for some more, just because I want to make sure I've explored this thoroughly. And I'm looking at views of various stakeholders, so this is where interviews come in. This will include current faculty in the early childhood program that teach math and science, current administrators, so I'm going to actually talk to probably the department head of the program, two other administrators as well, ask them what they think should be taught to these, what these early childhood candidates should know and be able to do in relation to technology integration in STEM subjects. I'll talk to a few current K-12 educators, and amazingly, last week I did an IRB modification to allow for this, and it got passed. I actually got my IRB modification back in like 3 days, which I know is opposite to what a lot of you have experienced. I'm going to talk to some recent graduates of the ESED program if they're available, but they're not. They're the lowest on my priority list at this point. Their perspective is important, but I may not have time. But they're part of what I got permission to do with the IRB modification. I can talk to them if I have time. I also have a committee of, at this point, it's a committee of 2 people, me and a math faculty person, who I'm going to talk to about my should that when I analyze this data and I write it up. She's going to help me figure out, if my analysis was balanced, if it makes sense. I'll take her input and I may adjust things. I'm actually going to try to put one person on there also that's a math person. I'm going to try to solicit her this week. So I have a committee of 3, me and one math faculty person and one science. And this committee looks at what I do throughout. In terms of what is the other thing I have to look at, because you have to look at you have to figure out what should be for needs assessment. In the needs assessment methodology, you look at for what should be, related to your question, which I've already told you a couple times, and you have to look at what is, and then you compare those two. You kind of smack them up against each other, and the gaps that appear are what you call your needs, and the thing that you do in the end is you sort of prioritize those needs as best you can. So in terms of what is, I'm currently collecting syllabi for I've targeted 2 classes that I'm going to look at in the early childhood program. One's called Teaching Content and Process in Science Education, and the other one's Teaching Content and Process in Math. I'm also going to look at the class that I teach, and I'm going to look at all of these classes then to answer that question: what are we teaching these candidates that they should know and be able to do in relation to technology integration in math and science? So I'm focusing on these. There are other science classes these candidates take. They take biology. They take geology as an option that they could take. They take geometry. They take an algebra class. They take a lot of different math and science classes, but I cannot look at all of them. And even if I did look at them, how could I really assume that all the candidates are getting that experience? I think it's important that I focus, and I'm going to look at these 3. And I'm missing the syllabi for these 2 early childhood classes, and I'm going to solicit those this week and comb through those. And then after I do that, I'll also get information about the major related assignments, and if there are any key assessments that maybe allude to the use of technology, then I will incorporate those in data collection. I have not really begun this part yet. I've done a lot of this up here for data collection. I have told various faculty that I want to talk to you and I want to interview you sort of unofficially, and then my next step this week will be to make sure that I, probably tomorrow, send out an email, include the informed consent documentation, and really officially solicit them and try to schedule them for actual data collection. I don't think that I've done quite a few interviews in the past 2 years, and I do not think that what I'm asking them is going to yield extensive data that require that just take a long time to process. I think it's going to take a long time to process it. I do think that, but I don't think it's going to be as extensive as some of the interviews that I've done where I have like 15 questions or 20 questions. I actually have about 2 or 3 questions for these people that I'm talking to. And even though we can, chit chat and talk and I can explore things, I think that these interviews will not be I don't think they'll totally kill me, but I always say that and then I'm probably going to be wrong. And then for needs and gaps between, well, that's in the future. That's after data collection, so I'm not going to talk about that. All right, so that's where I'm at. I'm kind of all over the place. I am slowly working through the should piece, and I need to get on interviewing people. Haven't done that yet, but I've planted a lot of seeds with people and given informed consent documents to at least 2 people that I will hopefully interview. I've talked to an instructor at the local school that's a STEM teacher and asked him if he would let me interview him. He said yes. So, the next step would be to officially, formally solicit that and schedule that. And I've also talked to an elementary teacher that is widely respected as just a really talented teacher who and this is purposive sampling that I'm using, so I don't have time to go figure out who's the perfect teacher to talk to. I'm just talking to somebody that is respected as a very competent teacher in the elementary level, so I'll interview that person. And then my critical friends don't know it yet, but they may be they may be part of my data collection as well, because they are current K-12 educators with a bigger picture perspective on instructional technology. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.